Hello, I am Jacy. Very, very excited to be here, especially second week of the semester. Very exciting. Here to talk to you a little bit about spatial design. It's something that kind of fills into a lot of things that I do, not just professionally. It goes into my personal art practice, and then also how I think somewhat in the classroom. So I am an ETSU alum, very excited to be speaking to you all. I'll be showing a lot of collaborative work with Cortina, so definitely during the first couple sections, I want to note that I am working with a team, so it's not just me. So what we'll be talking about is some spatial design principles, so what I think about when thinking about a space and designing the media for that space. Also, we'll go into prototyping, how we prototype with the tools that we have, and maybe thinking about some other tools that we can use. And then I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, but trust me, I will tie it all back in. I'm going to be talking about my current research with Appalachian Sci-Fi, and then how I've utilized some of these spatial design ideas with that. So let's get, I will go through it all again. Rewind. No, I'm just kidding. So, and I'm actually going to start my timer here so I don't talk forever. So what happens when you're thinking about media, you're creating, but you're thinking beyond that computer screen, your tablet, and you're thinking about a space. So even I've been doing this for a while now, I still have to do certain things to realign myself with the physical space. So it's an ongoing learning. So spatial design. So with spatial design, we're looking at some of these key principles here. So we'll start with, of course, like, what is your goal? What are you trying to do? And with that, we'll talk about on the next slide, you got to be a little flexible. Then we're going to talk about understanding the box. I like to use the cliche term of thinking outside the box. We're going to be thinking outside the box. And then, oh no, don't look at this. We're going back. Forget you saw that yet. We're going to talk about constraints. So you may run into limitations, but how do we use those to think more creatively? And then sight lines and flow, how you will flow through a space. And very importantly, accessibility. So thinking about that from the very beginning. And then one of the final principles is the tech test. Okay. So we'll be talking a little bit about technology, what kind of tech I'm using, and then maybe what you can implement into your own work. So with your goals, you're going to start with your goals. Many of you may have a creative project that's in mind. Now, it's okay if not everyone in here is thinking about a physical space like a museum, but you might be thinking about something like in a gallery space or even something in VR, something with AR. So I hope you can take something from this whole presentation, but you're going to start with your goals, but you're going to be flexible with those goals. When thinking about a space, that goal and what your concept is going to mold, because we're thinking about the space from the very beginning. So down here I like to point out this one. Who's been to New Orleans? Has anyone been to New Orleans? So there's this really great history museum on Canal Street called New Orleans. And what they wanted to, I'll show a few pieces from this museum actually, but what they wanted to do is really highlight, their goal was to highlight the food, because New Orleans food is incredible. There's so much food, history and culture there. So with this, they knew the goal was we want to highlight the food. How are we going to do that? Then we start thinking about the physical space. So this one, you're sitting at a diner. You have these pretty iconic chefs talking to you how you make the food and the history behind it and some of those more interesting cultural aspects of that food. So initial goal, we want to educate people about the food and the history. How are we going to do that? We have this space, so we're thinking through the space. So understanding the box. We have this theoretical box that we're trying to bust out of. So you're going to think about the space from the very, very beginning. So Much of my work is with museums and say even like sports arenas, and then sometimes in gallery spaces. So I'm thinking about that space from the beginning. I'm thinking about like the dimensions of the space, how you enter, where are the entry and exit points, and how that'll influence my concept, okay? So this is important from the start. So each of your spaces come with their own things, right? Like it might be historical space, so you have to tie in those historical aspects. There might be different surfaces. You're working with a lot of different things here. So it'll expand those storytelling possibilities of that initial concept you have. And this is something that can't be just in a script. So if you are starting with your concept and your goals, and you're just writing through that whole story without tying in that physical space that you're doing, it's going to feel very disjointed. So even something like VR, how does someone enter into that space? Even if they are putting on a headset, is there something that they're in before that, before they put on the goggles? You're thinking through that whole experience of where that person is. So visitor first. So with physical constraints, we have this box, this actual box. Let's think about the room we're in right now. So we're going to think about maybe what are some constraints, but these aren't going to hold us back. So there might be, like how many walls are there, and I'll show some examples. Maybe there's a lack of walls. Pretend this wall was just gone. What are we going to do? Sound and acoustics. Does it have a really high ceiling? Is sound going to really bounce? You're thinking through that experience, those sensorial experiences. Then also light. So for example, in here, we don't have light shining directly onto our projections. I work with projections a lot, but if we had light that's just beaming in here, you may want to switch what kind of technology you're using, right? Like a projection is going to be super blown out. So thinking about what kind of light's coming in, what are we hearing, we're thinking about those constraints. But with those constraints, we're going to drive creativity, okay? So it's not going to hinder us. It's going to make us think differently about our space. So here's an example. So this is a project I finished up. It was last year. It opened, I believe, last September. This is called the People's House. It is for the White House Historical Association. So we were tasked with recreating, I believe it ended up being 5 different rooms that are actually in the White House that maybe the public can't always go see. So how do we make that space more accessible to the general public? We're going to make this immersive room. So this immersive room, everything you see on the walls and the floor are projections. Not only are they projections, but they're interactive projections. They're using radar touch. We'll go more into that later. So with this, I have my physical space. I know what the dimensions are. I'm given where the exits are. I know what kind of ceiling it has, but those physical rooms are all very, very different. You all are aware of like the Oval Office. We did an oval room. So I'm showing this one. This is an oval room. So thinking through how do we make a room, this physical space, feel like this other room in still its same dimensions. So I have these right angles, these 4 walls. I have these exit points that are probably not where those actual doors are. So with this, we had to think creatively. We originally thought maybe we'll do like big set extensions, but then we're also thinking about accessibility that raises or lowers where our horizon line is. We want it to still feel like you're in around space. So we used things like Unreal to mock it up. We got creative. We worked with the association, the White House Historical Association, to make sure that we're not taking too many artistic liberties of like what we're cutting and what we're putting back in. I'll show another one. So this was the green room, more square. This was probably the easiest room, but making sure like we have these digital doors. We're also thinking about those physical doors, how people are entering the space. What do they see as soon as they walk in? The room on the right is a room that was way longer than the physical space. So thinking about what do people need to experience it to still feel like that actual room. So from the beginning, I'm thinking about the physical space. I'm not just designing it however I think it seems fit. I'm thinking about the actual dimensions and incorporating that into the design. And as I speak with people, making sure that it still fits the goal, the initial goal of making these rooms more accessible to the public. So some other things, sightlines and flow. So who all has been to just a museum? Okay, great, good. So think about how you move through that museum. There will be some things that you may come upon that are revealed. There could be a story arc, but you're not just going into a museum and sitting the whole time, at least. You might be moving about, you're going from exhibit to exhibit, so you're not fixed. So we're thinking about those entry and exit points and how we are pulsing people through the museum. So think about story points, like how do we want people to move through? So this one is Atlanta History Center. I'll show a couple more pictures in the next slide, but this is in Atlanta. And the really cool piece about this one, we projected onto this huge, I have it in this next picture, this huge painting. So it's a cyclorama. It's curved, very large. It's historic. So we're also thinking about, we want that historic painting to still shine through, but we want to tell some of those more nuanced stories. So the experience, it will start at the bottom. Visitors ride up an escalator. There's different points as you ride up, what you're seeing. So one of the ways that we were thinking about it is that here's like on the left, you can see a projection. So even duplicating up some of those story points, so no matter where you're standing, you're still getting that important information in those visuals, but they're not just mirrored images. So we're thinking creatively that even if you're stepping back and you see all of it, it still feels interesting. But if you're standing this way or this way, you're still getting those pockets of information that will tell you the whole story. And that'll be from the ground up. You can see like on the back one, telling those different stories, highlighting people, pushing them forward, and thinking abstractly in our projections. So that is the Atlanta History Center and the cyclorama. Very cool. So in continuing Sightlines and Flow, I always love to talk about the Georgia Aquarium. This one was done around 2019, 2020. And this is the Predators of the Deep exhibition. So it's the sharks, specifically the sharks. There's a lot of great research done on sharks, really enjoyed that, but it's no surprise that a lot of people have a fear of sharks. So they knew that their goal in mind was this fear to fascination. They knew many people have this fear of them. How do we educate people so that they are more informed and maybe that fear is transformed? So that was their goal. They have, of course, the shark tanks. We can't really just move the sharks. But I mean, maybe, I don't know, but I would assume you can't just move the sharks. So the sharks, the space is a fixed space. It's a hallway that kind of wraps around the tanks. And at the start, this one's really fun because even at the beginning, you first walk into it, you see the shark tanks, and the music might be a little more tense, maybe like borderline a little scary. So it's a little tense. And as you work through the space, you're going to learn about the sharks. So this one was one I worked on. It's about the actual shark themselves. You're learning about them, what they eat. This one you can actually peel back the different layers of the shark, the like skin and the muscle and the skeletal layer. So you're learning about them. There's another one that talks about where they are throughout the world. This one was really interesting because the reference I was given was like a cross section of like a tuna fish. And I was like, I need more to work with on that because I was making the materials for like the muscle layer. And so I had to really deep dive into some research on it. So in continuing, you're learning about the actual sharks. There's a few more interactives to look at. You're just gaining an understanding that music starts to shift. And you're still seeing the sharks. So the sharks are with you, walking among you the whole time. Swimming among you the whole time. And then towards the end of it, that music has really changed. It's very uplifting, and you have this almost like a takeaway. So this is the final interactive, and this is all about like what you can do with shark conservation. So you're kind of going on this journey with those sharks. You've learned about them, so now what can you do to help them? So thinking about that space, it was a pretty tight space. So some other things that happened with this that we had to adapt is some of the screens are pretty bright on the tank. You can't have that. So we had to adapt some of them. So if you go there now, some of those things might be a little different. But we're thinking about the sharks as well, not just the people, making sure the sharks are taken care of. They're not getting blinded by bright screens. That was taken into consideration. But we had to adapt, kind of shift a little bit. But yeah, so this is kind of a story arc through an exhibition. So if you go to Georgia Aquarium, maybe think about that. So a very important thing is thinking about accessibility from the very start. If you are working in any kind of games or interactives, you should be thinking about this from the very beginning. It should not be an afterthought. It should be designed in. So not patched in later. Inclusive design, it expands who can experience that space or that game. It enriches the experience for everyone. There could be implementing other tech that can add accessibility. So this is Aquarium of the Pacific. It's in California. And so this is a very large screen. We'll talk a little bit more about this project later as well. Very, very large screen. There's sound, there's visuals, multiple visuals. But then there's also this haptic touch that was incorporated so people can actually feel what was going on the screen. So thinking about incorporating this other tech to enrich people's experience. Moving on with more accessibility. So going back to the People's House that's in DC, this has touch points. So again, this was interactive. It was using radar touch technology. These are all projections, but you can actually go up and hover and activate various points in the rooms. But what's cool is that, again, it's enriching the experience for everyone. So the actual walls in the White House are pretty tall, and there's paintings, like very, very iconic paintings that might be like very high up. You can't touch them, you can't see them up close, even if you were to go into the physical space. But the cool thing about this is that you can pull the paintings down from the wall, see them up close, twirl them around. Even the furniture, can't really go in there, pick up the furniture and be like, yep, that's a chair. But in this, you can. So this, you can rotate some of the different furniture and learn more about the history, learn history about some of the figures. And in thinking about accessibility from the start, we're thinking about where those touch points are. So we're thinking about drawing the eye to things, but not taking people out of the experience. So we have these little circles that are bright. You can hover over them, it activates. It also dips down what's behind it to be darker, so the text has more contrast, it's easier to see. There's icons to tell you that you can rotate it. There's also this particle that just adds to kind of this like magic razzle dazzle, and it can help you see where your hand is. So it's giving you a visual of like, all right, my hand's hovering over this part, okay? So yeah, that one's very fun. So the tech test, being in tech, digital media folks, maybe a lot of people who you just like tech. Things are shiny, they're exciting, you want the latest and the greatest, but you have to think, what's actually useful and what do I actually need for the project I'm working on? I have been guilty of it. I'm like, that looks really cool, should I try it? And then it was just cool for being cool. So the tech test is, does it fit what you're trying to do? Does it have longevity? Does it need longevity? And does it function in the space? So we were talking about those constraints. Does it function? We talked a little bit about the projection. Does it work with the space that you're working in? Didn't mean to put sightlines and flow on the top of that. Should be tech. But technology is the means, not the message. So we're not using tech for tech's sake. I really like that line. So with this one, you can see up here, this is actually for the Ramses traveling exhibition. It traveled all over the world, and they did this really neat, one of the projections, it was multiple screens. So you have this map projection that you can see here. You have this glass that'll bring up text, and then behind you is even more screens. So there's a lot going on, okay? So we're thinking through, like, okay, from the beginning, this is gonna travel. How are we gonna move this around? So in thinking through things like this, we'll talk to people about if you want this to run all day long, but it's in a dark space, thinking about what kind of bulbs you're using in your projection, what kind of media player. Is it a bright room? Have you considered an LED wall? Much like the one that you all see in the cave, that's a really big LED wall, very, very bright, does well in a brighter room. So something like that. Can it be future-proof? Can we iterate on it quickly? Content updates. This one had a lot of content updates. It was translated into German, French, Spanish, and Japanese. So making sure that we can iterate even on not just the tech, but the design. So quickly putting in those different languages. So thinking about those goals from the beginning. So with this, we do a lot of prototyping. I do a lot of prototyping in my own work, not just with this professional work. I hope you all can take something from this because it is very helpful and very important. So you're going to be designing a space for human presence. We're thinking about that visitor the whole time. So how do you think like a visitor? You put yourself in their shoes. So that might be mocking up the space in different ways. So we're going to go back to this big screen that I showed you before with the haptic touch. This is the Aquarium of the Pacific. So this is a 9K film, a very, very large resolution film. It's 32 feet tall and 130-foot long screen. The curved screen, I believe, is a 180-degree arc. So it's very large. In addition to that very large screen, we also have this disc in the middle that rises and lowers. So there's a lot going on. You can imagine sitting in such a large screen like that. Like think about sitting in an IMAX theater. You typically don't want that seat right at the very front because you're like, it's a very distorted image. So from the beginning, we were thinking through, okay, we want no matter where you sit in the audience, it doesn't feel distorted. So what we used here is just a 3D model. It's a little fuzzy here, but it's okay, a little dark. But what I did is I just used the 3D software. I mocked up the screen. I put just a frame as a texture. And then in the audience, I put cameras in different spots. And I was using a 50mm lens, very close to eyesight, to human eyesight. And then that way I could be like, all right, what are these people seeing? Is it like crazy looking or does it work? So that was really helpful from the beginning and how we were showing the content. If you're sitting like way on this side, we don't want to put like everything over here, right? Because then you're constantly having to turn your neck. So thinking about where we're placing that content. This is probably one of my favorite projects that I've worked on. So this was an elevator ride. This is back in that New Orleans in New Orleans. So this will take you from the bottom floor to the top floor, and the experience is different if you're going up versus you're going down. This is my coworker Andrew that I work very closely with. And what we did is, that's on the left, that's what it looks like installed. So when you walk into an elevator, you have big visuals here, and big visuals here. So all around you, just not where the doors are. And we wanted it to take you through the history of, almost said Atlanta, of New Orleans. Another goal from the beginning was, I think the client wanted, we wanted to feel like really crazy. Like we kind of want people to like hurl. And I was like, all right, we're not gonna do that. So, jokes, of course. We do not, if you read it, you will not hurl, I hope. But so we had an idea of like, all right, we can't put everything at the bottom. We kind of know where stuff needs to go. But what we ended up doing is we took all these TVs and stacked them on desks. Probably not the safest way, but we got it to work. And we were just putting frames up just to see it. And it actually showed us that we were thinking about it wrong. Even after doing many of these spaces before, it really transformed like, oh, okay, this is what people are seeing as they go through the experience. And even those who work in film, about the rule of thirds, like where you're trying to put content on the screen. It's where the eye naturally goes. Those rules were out the window for this. So we had to think very differently. We had a jump scare on the riding up ride. So we needed to make sure that's in a very accessible area. So we're thinking about accessibility in this as well. Like what are different people experiencing in the elevator? And then even like the top third, we like barely had anything in there. And it felt very empty. So we're thinking about filling that space. So this one, it's very neat. You can see some of the experience on the left. This is if you're going down, you're flying down onto Canal Street. Much of this was done in Cinema 4D. But you're seeing the different history. This was composited in. This is footage of an actual band. But we also had to balance how much movement. Because again, Andrew and I didn't want people to get sick. So we're thinking through like how much movement is too much movement, but it's still exciting. So you still feel like you're on like a ride in Universal. So yeah, that one was one of my favorites because it was so different, really fun experience. Got to learn a lot about the history. So just a few more prototypes. This one was very interesting. It's another Georgia one. I bring this one up because this has two funky screens that are actually different shapes. It also has projection on waterfalls. So it's like a water feature that's also a screen. And then there's a disc that rises and lowers, of course. Got to have like more than 10 things going on, So for this one, so you saw in the previous example where you're using a physical mock-up. This one I just used After Effects. So using something you already have. If you're thinking about the space, use the tools that are already in your pipeline. That's where that tech for tech's sake comes in to play as well. We've had people be like, oh, well, why don't we put it in VR? But we didn't need to take it to that point. So thinking like, what can I do quickly that I can iterate quickly, and what am I already using? So in this case, using After Effects, this is the actual projection going on. This is what we marked up in After Effects on the left. It is helpful for not only my team, but also for the client to see how that content was interacting with each other. This one, we do a lot of storyboarding. This one had the most heavy storyboarding. This was Jamestown, and this was a film called Bacon's Rebellion. It's more of a 4D theater. There's actually like physical elements like fog. I'm trying to think if there were smells too. I think there were smells. But this one, really, really neat idea. You have a large curved screen on the back, but then you have all these, about 4 screens in front of them, different shapes, different orientations that are driving story points. So this was all shot live. We got footage of everything, but before that, we knew we had to fill those screens. So we're thinking through storyboarding, what you're going to see. Does that like feel disjointed? So a lot of storyboarding on this one. So you can say like, oh, this is who is talking. These are the story points we want to pull forward for the audience. Him. This one was very neat. We got to like burn down like a whole building when we were filming. Got some cool, I should have put the video in there. I'm very sorry. It was very, very neat. But yes. So now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and then I'm going to tie it back in. So you guys stick with me. I will reel it back in. So my current research is it's something I'm very excited about, and I wanted to introduce you all to it because it'll continue to grow. I've been researching it for just about a year now, and many of you may find that you can contribute to it. So my current research is something called Appalachian Sci-Fi. Now, this is a framework, again, still kind of in early stages, but it's something I've already been using in my personal art practice, so I'll show you a little bit of that. But let's get into what the heck is this. So it's a creative framework. So it's something that other creatives can use. So how you think about work, and then how can you create within these ideas. It's a speculative storytelling based around Appalachia and also representing Appalachia. I found it very important. I feel like Appalachia has been represented a certain way for a very, very long time. So I wanted to kind of break that narrative. There's other stories out there, there's other experiences out there, and I think bringing those voices in is very important. So how can we do that? Through a speculative means. So that's what we're doing here. Resisting a flattening, bringing in your personal experiences. This is a cyanotype quilt that I've used. I'm projecting, I'm activating it with projections. I'm using my personal archive in that. So tying it back, I promised you I would tie it back to what I just talked about. So recently I was working with a gallery space. So how do I implement Appalachian Sci-Fi within that gallery space with my own artwork? So this is, I'll kind of walk you through it. So this is entering the space, and on the left, I'm thinking about how you're entering and moving through it. So from the beginning, you are introduced to this hiking kiosk that I think there's one like right next to the library actually, because I used it as reference. So you have this hiking kiosk. It's kind of like your wayfinding. That's how like you start a trail, how you start a journey. So I have this from the beginning. And as you get closer, I have fragments of my own personal archive from both sides of my family that I'm bringing forward. Some stuff I'm pushing back. And then also using the next room, this like digital space that I created with pieces of the map of it. So this is an up close. You can see I even pulled in some like Appalachian sayings that my father and I might exchange with each other. So tying in my experience into this. So then you move into the space, and this is where the sci-fi. So sci-fi is about estranging. That's a Suban principle with science fiction. It's one of the things that I'm using in my research. So estranging what we're seeing. So in the back, we have what looks like part of maybe the Appalachian forest. It's actually all digital. I used photo scans in Unreal Engine to create these forest spaces. And then I created these like amorphous figures that I call are like data collectors. So they're preserving the archive rather than extracting from it. And then in the physical space, we have these inflatable versions of them. Many people like went up and like hugged them. They are I should have brought one, they're very cuddly. So they are the physical element, and they're also the handmade element. So with Appalachian Sci-Fi, I see it as not just this digital form, but tying in some of these handmade feels. So I think about things like quilting and sewing, things like canning, that your hands are part of. So these are the physical handmade in addition to those digital forms. Here's just maybe another picture of them. Everything is animated. These are looping video projections. This one was interesting because I actually didn't get the space dimensions until not long before I had to install. But I had in mind what the space could be. And because I had limited time to actually map it to actual dimensions, I built it so I could iterate on those dimensions. And inside of here, if you get close, inside are more pieces of archival material. So these data collectors, again, storing storing the archive. They're for people to use, to continue the stories to be told. So I used my own stories. They're inside of them. You can get up close and look through the portals. So some of the themes here, things like nonlinear time, it's a fusion of folklore and technology. I think organic versus digital, it's very important to me. Feeling of being worn in, and world building. I love world building. I know some of you also enjoy world building as well. Very fun. So who can create within it? It's all mediums. It's not just a digital, it's not spatial. It could be writing, it could be drawings, it could be community discussions and talks. It can be a lot of different things, and it'll continue to evolve. So what my plans are moving forward, it'll continue to be communal. Keep an eye out. I would hope to do roundtables. I've already been having one-on-one discussions with different artists, including like Lacey Hale, if you're familiar with her work. And it's really open to just, I can't define who an Appalachian is. That's not up to me. It's whoever has ties to it. So yeah, it's not like limiting. So I hope you all keep an eye out. The website is up, but it's not accepting submissions. We're still building it out right now. But I just kind of wanted to plug it because I do want this to be a communal, creative thing. So I hope you all, I'm hoping November, we'll see. So just keep an eye out. Keep your ear to the ground. I'll be posting about it. But it's something that I hope like all creatives can submit to. So rounding it out, you're going to think about the space from the very beginning. You better. You got to. Think about it from the beginning as you're crafting that story. So it's not just like one before the other. They work together. You're going to prototype. I hope you all do that with any kind of creative project you're doing. You're going to prototype early and often. You're going to play test early and often. You're going to get other eyes on it. I always say don't work on islands. So I might quote someone else has told me that, and it's stuck with me forever. So don't work on an island, get other people involved, be prepared to adapt. Things change, and things often do not work how you think they might. So you might get in that space and be like, oh, this is way different. So even in the gallery, I had an audio element of some of my nature walks, just to kind of add more of the sensorial experience. But there was also audio on the other side of the wall for me. So we had to balance where that audio was moving through the space and making sure it wasn't competing, because that kind of ruins the experience for both artists. Use what you have. Tech is exciting. There's always new tech, but make sure you're not just using it because it's cool and shiny. Make sure it fits with what you're doing. Make sure you have support for it. If it does go wrong and blow up, you have ways to fix it, pivot. So be intentional, and then just keep your eyes open for any Appalachian sci-fi updates, because they'll be cool. But I hope it grows to be something bigger. But I think that's all I have. I really appreciate you all listening. I hope you got some kind of cool information from this, or at least maybe you learned about a museum that you've been to, some of the back-end work. But this is all really, really fun stuff. I should mention too, we've had digital media students and other students who have worked on these projects with me as interns. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. It's not just me. A lot of the stuff is a team effort. Even things like accessibility and those designs, those are people that's their thing. That's like what they specialize in. So I have a lot of people helping me. I'm just here to show how cool it is. But yeah, thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Appalachian sci-fi.
Is this a movement that you are leading the charge on, or who coined that?
So it is something I've been developing. I will say there is an essay out there. I don't want to say I invented the term. So there is like people who I feel like have already been working in that space, already been thinking about speculative futures, especially within Appalachia. So this is just something that I'm kind of, how do I kind of like wrangle it all in? Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, Sarah. So when you're thinking within your space, how does that develop your story further? So you can't just write a story and then throw it into any space. That space itself can dictate like which way it can go, what parts of the story you need to tell. So that's what I mean by expanding. Yeah.
You use the term speculative storytelling a few times. I wanted you to elaborate on what that term means in terms of like how you're thinking about the structure.
Yeah, so great question. So speculative storytelling. So thinking beyond just what, like we're grounding it in, say, our experiences and maybe this region, but we're thinking beyond that. So it might be something that hasn't happened yet. It could be thinking about like the future. I always, in a lot of my research, I think a lot about like Afrofuturism. So how do we think about these different worlds? So that's kind of the speculative side. So speculative in that we can think about different possibilities, but it's still grounded in, say, like the region and the experiences of the people. Yeah. So I can talk a little bit about that with the People's House, because that one was the one that's interactive projections. So that one, I'll say a little bit more detail on it. So this is using real-time rendering. I'll mention that too. That's the benefit of Unreal. It's like a video game. So it's not like a video. That's where the interactive can come in. So each of these walls, there's 4 walls, and each wall has 2 projections. So it has 2 projections. It also has something above that can handle the radar touch. So it's looking for where you're basically piercing that invisible like force field in a way is how you can think about it. Each wall had its own computer, so which was also kind of something crazy to handle because computers get really hot. Like think about the projector fan right now, like the heat it's putting off, then add a beefy computer. So thinking about keeping those cool. So multiple projections on each wall. So how we did it is that in Unreal, we set up cameras. So each room, the cameras remained for the most part in the same spot. So we would have a camera pointed to one wall, camera pointed to the other wall. The difficult thing about this was with radar touch, there wasn't really much support with Unreal to radar touch. It took a lot of research and development, also reaching out to other people, other programmers. One of our alum actually was a big part of that, Jason Beal, researching and kind of figuring out the pipeline. So I will say the programmers helped connect it. I was just part of the content, so give them a shout out. But that took a lot of testing things and seeing if it would work. But yeah, mostly done in Unreal, some code, a lot of computers, a lot of projectors. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So I have like adapted even like how I define myself sometimes. So I graduated from here. I worked locally as like a VFX person doing some motion graphics, and I was actually working at the same time. I don't know if many of you remember Hands-On Museum. When I was in college, I worked there, and I was working in the museum, like in the basement, like cleaning, like scraping the floors. And I saw this opportunity come up that was like, "Do you love museums?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in a museum." And then it was like, "Do you like animation?" and like all this other stuff. So I was like, "Wow, that sounds like me." So I applied. It was in the Washington, D.C. area. It's right outside of D.C. in McLean. And I ended up interning for this place. And Oh, I'm touching the mic, sorry. Interning for this place. One of the first projects I got to work on was for the FBI, which was really cool. We did like a little experience thing for them. And then they kept me on full time after that. And in the beginning, they actually didn't do 3D work, much 3D work in house. So I was doing mostly video editing, actually. So my degree was in animation, did some VFX, went into video editing. So just kind of being open to opportunities. And then there came this opportunity that was for the NASCAR museum. They're like, oh, we had someone trying to animate this engine, but they couldn't get it to work. And I was like, that was like one of our assignments in undergrad. So I did it, and then ever since then, I became their 3D artist. So implementing more of the pipeline, bringing in things like Unreal and Cinema 4D, working very closely with Andrew Prosty. So that I've been with them pretty consistently. The work I do is pretty niche, so working in spaces. There are many more companies that do stuff like that, and art has kind of expanded in that direction as well, which is very cool. I just got to go to Meow Wolf for anyone who's heard or been to that. It was pretty neat. So thinking about a full like immersive experience. So I've had other people reach out to me. One of my best networks, and many students have heard me talk about this a lot, was the people I graduated with from like digital media. So they knew some of the things I was working on. I know some of the things they're working on. So just like, I don't know, providing opportunities back and forth. And then being the person that's reliable is probably one of the biggest things. So then that person will tell someone else. So I've done stuff outside of with Cortina for like North Carolina Museum of Art, because I know someone there that was like, oh, I know what you do. So it just like being reliable, being open to opportunities is really great. Highlighting what skill sets that you have that they might not know. You just want to be a solution to whatever problem. And that might be like, I don't know how to solve it, but I'm going to figure it out. And that is so invaluable. So for any kind of job that you're hoping to go into, you really want to be that person that like, I can go to this person and we can work through this, you know, even if like, maybe we don't get this like final solution, they're going to like stick with me and we're not going to work on an island. So that has really helped. Teaching, I always knew I wanted to teach. I planted those seeds early. I wanted to come back and teach. So when I saw the opportunity, it opened up for that. I definitely jumped on that. I also love Johnson City, so wanted to come back. But luckily, this company has been really great and it's allowed me to continue. Also built great partnerships with people, and now I have more people working with me from here, which is great. Yeah. Yeah. That was a long-winded answer. Yeah. Oh, that's like, it's not just me like lighting a match and being like, all right. We have like people that they're like specialized in specifically like fire effects. So we hired these people, they come and set it up for us, and we have a lot of safety going on. So we're like pretty far away from it, but it was like the last thing we did, of course, because you can't burn down a structure twice. So yes, that was definitely done in one take. Yeah. It's cool. Yeah.
How do you you mentioned a screen and you had to project onto a waterfall or another place where you were working with the sharks. And those aren't necessarily places that are easy to set up and work with on site. So how do you control for those real-time aspects in your own studio or in your Unreal Engine?
That's great. Yeah. So especially water, you know you're going to lose some contrast. So with the waterfall for Gwinnett, that one, let's see if I can pull it up. That one was interesting because I knew that, so I knew whatever I put in the center, I probably need to bump up the contrast so it appears on here. Luckily with this one, so we'll work in a studio, but we'll also send stuff as they're sometimes building or installing this. We will mock it up or send it over to them to just see how it's working. So it doesn't need to look pretty. I just need to see like what this is looking like. For the Georgia Aquarium, the screen shining on the sharks was just unexpected. So that was just a matter of pivoting. I think that interactive ended up just moving to like a whole different area, just because the shark safety and health is priority, of course, in the shark exhibit. So that's just unexpected. You might just not know. But also being prepared when you get into the space, because with museums, when they're building things, sometimes deadlines go by. So you just have to be ready to iterate in the space. The People's House was a good example of that too. Once we mocked it up a bunch of different times in different spaces. We rented studios to see how it was working. But still, once we got into the actual space, we had to adjust. But we could do that, and we knew that was a possibility. So setting it up a way that like, oh, we might have to like shift things around, and budgeting time for that as well. So padding your time. Pad your time for when things go wrong. Everyone's like, yes, yeah.
So I've heard like I guess 4 stories about this technically, but whenever you're going through like digital media, like undergrad, could you ever have a moment where you were like starting, you're like, oh, I want to do this concentration that went more and more along.
That's exactly what I did. My concentration is animation. I'm not an animator. I do animation a lot. I'm animating for the Air and Space Museum right now, some like hands. But I liked doing a lot of different things. Probably about halfway through the program, I was like, oh, I really love video. And at the time, like now we have a VFX concentration. We did not when I went through the program. And one of our faculty members, he just recently retired, Marty Fitzgerald. He met with me and he was like, I think what you're trying to do is more like VFX. So I stayed in animation, but I just used that to try to work on other projects I was interested in. So I could have switched concentrations, but I was using what I had and implementing it into, maybe it's not just a character animating, but like how do I composite it into a space? So if you can't switch, like how can you utilize what you have? Also, with digital media specific, sorry for those not in digital media, those are just, 4 concentrations are just kind of like a starting point. Use those to go where you need to go, right? So like, if you're in game design, but there's something else a little more nuanced that you want to do, you use that and research it to figure out how you're going to get there. But yeah, I definitely did that because I like to do a lot of things, and that's the problem with creatives. Yeah. So assignments, especially in like the start of a program, it might be that that assignment is to get you a specific skill. So you need to show that you can do that skill, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. When you get into higher classes and even towards the end of the semester, that's where you can start incorporating your research. But it's good to speak with your faculty member about what your goals are, because if they can't fit into a class assignment, it might be a discussion of like where we could fit that in somewhere else.